Hi, this is the last in the series of demonstrations for project number 3, the colored pencil still life. Today I'm going to demonstrate some colored pencil techniques. We already did the marker value underpainting on Canson paper, so we're ready now to go straight to colored pencil. I'm going to talk about some techniques that you can use to finish off your colored pencil still life. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to start my color addition right on top of the marker value rose demonstration that I did, and I'm going to work from lighter to darker. So I'm going to start with white because I've got these petals in the foreground that are pretty bright. So I'm going to use circular strokes, and I'm not pressing down hard. It's almost like a placeholder right now. And again, there was no marker value wherever I'm going to use my lightest, brightest colors. The only value that I put in here was in the deepest shadows and some maybe 2s and 4s in the reflected light petals. So I'm going to go around and put the white just in the areas that are getting the light. Now try to almost limit my palette here. I could have used about, I'd say, 8 different colors on this one rose, but you may not have 8 different colors in your set. So I'm going to try to limit it to about 5, and then maybe bring in some purples, some creams to adjust the color that's in there. So the next area that I'm going to work on would be the lightest color after the white, which would be these soft pinks. So right in here, blush pinks. This one's called light pink, so that'll work. And then I'm going to bring in some other pinks, some stronger pinks. There's a blush pink and then there's a bright pink. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start with the shadow color here. And I just want to, I've got a little bit of value there. So I want to leave that value coming through, and then I'll adjust it later with some brighter colors. So I'm going to come in here with all these, just the secondary bright pinks, and just drop in a real soft glaze, we'll call it, of this soft pink. So where I've put in these soft pinks, now I can go over with a brighter pink, and that would be, if I limited my palette here, it would be bright pink. Now having that lighter color as a base for this brighter pink, it's going to brighten it up considerably. If I put it into an area where there isn't any bright color, it's going to look more like that, which is appropriate for the shadow colors, but I want to keep this fairly bright in the secondary lights. And then there's a little bit of cast shadow down here so that I can avoid bringing that brightest pink in there and just put this, or the lightest pink, and just put this pink over it. And I've got a little bit of a cast shadow there, and I can actually add a little bit more later with maybe a lavender. If it's got a little bit of white in the pencil, it's going to be pretty bright. So I don't want that too much in the shadow areas. A little bit. Now I'm also seeing some warm reds inside. These have been cool reds so far. These are the pinks, they're a little cooler. So I've got this is a rose. How about that? It's called a rose, but it's actually much warmer than the bright pink that I was using. So I'm going to glaze a little bit of that on top. So I'm going to bring that into especially the shadow areas. Okay, so I'm going to continue on in the shadows with this warmer rose red. Now this is This is an example of something that doesn't have a lot of marker value underneath it. Next thing I'm going to show you is something that has a lot of marker value. So this is a lot of colored pencil, and this is probably the most difficult thing to do, and that's why I'm doing it. And I'm brightening up, I'm reflecting, or I'm putting in some of that reflected light here and there. This is that light peach, the second pencil that I used, other than white. And it's good for, just right now, it's good for picking up some of these reflected lights. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the peach. There's some nice peach reflections in these shadows over here. And when I'm done with that, now it's time to burnish. So burnishing means pressing down. So do this at the end. Don't do this at the beginning. I'm going to come in here and brighten up my lights. And then I might need to adjust the other colors around it, but I do need a little bit stronger highlights and lights. And you can't be afraid to do this because I know I'm cautioning you on pressing down too hard. That's at the beginning, and if you need to really get that bright color, it shouldn't be as white as your reference. That's pretty much blown out, but if you want to get brighter and lighter, then you're going to need to do a little bit of burnishing. And this is one of the reasons why we use a neutral mid-value gray paper, because if you use something that's too dark, it's pretty hard to get your brights and lights. It's harder. So I'm reinforcing that texture, that pattern that's in those roses. You don't want to make this too bright because then it's not going to relate to the rest of it. It's still a colored pencil project, so it's not a photograph. It's not meant to be. Okay. I think I'm going to leave it like that. So the area that I want to talk about now for color addition is, and this one's a little bit more fully developed than the last one that I did. But I will do the background on here because I haven't done it yet. Something like this, a little bit of texture, a little bit of brighter color in the background. We don't want to leave anything just marker. So even in the backgrounds, we're going to have glazes of colored pencil, but they typically are glazes. There's no burnishing involved, or very little. It doesn't really take too much color to just bring out a little bit of light in the background. You don't want it to be bright if it's a dark background. Orange and scarlet and looks like deep red. Now I'm just going to glaze these colors on. And I'm going to go from darker to lighter here. You don't always have to go from lighter to darker. So I'm going to build it up from darker to lighter. Okay. And the way that I'm going to do that is, like I said, I'm going to start with the darker of the three colors that I just talked about. Now eventually I'm going to probably use black and maybe a dark brown over here. I'm using circular strokes again, flattened tip, or the edge of the pencil. It's going to work much better than using the point. So I'm going to cover a whole lot more area. I had a marker value variation in there. I left it at 80%, so I went 80% and black. So I just want to really do this. I could do it all over, but I really want to do this mostly in the lid areas here. Okay, so then I'm going to use my next lightest, which is the scarlet. And I'm just going to drag that across. And just in the brightest, the area that I want to make fairly bright. And if we were doing this off to the side where there's no marker, this is what it would look like. And you're not getting much of anything there. That's why we're using the marker values. And it's like a glazed oil painting. Let's see what the brightest color looks like now. So I just need a little bit of this. I don't want too much of this at all, because I don't want to make it too bright. It's a background. But just a little bit. And you could also do this in cross-hatching if you wanted to. I find that it's easier and better just to do these circular strokes. Each stroke blends into the last, kind of like the marker technique. So I went from darker to lighter just in those three colors. Now I'm going to fuse all that with, I've got a dark brown and a black. So let's see what the dark brown looks like. It's not going to do much. I'll probably get it to blend in, just to unify that surface a little bit more. Black is darker than the marker black. I think you can see that. So that's going to be my darkest color. Black is a color. And that gets me back to this dark background up against the edges of everything. So I put the black everywhere, and now I'm going to tie it in one more time with this. That's the darkest of the three colors that I used at the very beginning. That's a deep red. And I'm just going to glaze that over the black and the dark brown. So just about done, but I'll have both of these sides done.